When we first got involved at Lonsdale Links, it was around the year 2000. It was a small country golf club that had some challenges with membership at the time. They had some dwindling assets. The clubhouse was probably starting to get to a point of its life cycle where it needed to be replaced. The irrigation system was very poor. They didn't have a maintenance facility. They were probably down to 2 or 3 staff members. Limited amount of machinery, so it was becoming quite a challenge for the club to compete against clubs in the area. The original vision from a few prominent board members was really, how do we reinvent ourselves a little bit? There was some opportunity for some residential development nearby. The club borders a farm, so on the farm there was some opportunity to purchase some land and relocate some of the golf course into that and then redevelop the land. I suppose the idea around templates probably first started about 2012. We'd been so bogged down with a lot of the planning discussions that we really didn't have a clear vision about what the golf course would actually look like. In 2012 we went on a study trip to the US. We visited a lot of courses, but we visited the National Golf Links out on Long Island. And it was probably a little bit of a light bulb moment when we were out there that we saw the land that the National Golf Links was on, and it reminded us so much of the land at Lonsdale. I mean, the land at the National's got that sort of rolling sand dune sort of terrain, fronts the bay, but then it's got a lot of internal wetlands, it's got some shell grid areas, so it really thought, hey, the land at Lonsdale is actually not that different to the National. So the difference with the land at Lonsdale is that in the past it had been planted with a lot of Western Australian chewit gums, so they really towered over the natural landscape. If you were sitting here looking in from the clubhouse and you looked out across the course, you really couldn't see the contours of the land because the chewit gums popped up so high above it. So it was only when we started to clear that you really saw the undulations for the site, and then it even brought us further back to the National Golf Links. That's probably where the inspiration came for the National, and then it really just snowballed from that point, is that we actually are creating a real point of difference to the other courses in the area and something that had never been done before in Australian golf.
The first great golf course in America was the National Golf Links. It was built in 1911, so it was really the start of golf in America. And it was designed by a guy called Blair McDonald, who'd learnt golf in St Andrews. He studied at St Andrews University, and he learnt the game from old Tom Morris and young Tom Morris. So a pretty cool way to learn the game. Came back to America, and there really weren't many golfers in America, and him being a golfer and learning the game in St Andrews was sort of seen as being pretty educated. And so he was entrusted to design this first course, and the way he did it was he went back to the UK and kind of found his favourite golf holes. So he sort of assembled his 18 or 20 favourite holes, things like the road hole at St Andrews, or the Biarritz at the Biarritz Green at North Berwick, or the Redan, and it's kind of what you would do, I think, in any profession. If you want to be a good golfer, you tend to look at YouTube videos of Tiger Woods swinging, and so he went back, found these great golf holes, came back to National Golf Links, and he kind of adapted them to the site. So he built his version of the road hole, and he built his version of the Redan, and so at National Golf Links you see all of these kind of replicas of the original holes. And he went on to become a famous golf course architect. He had a protege, Seth Rayner, and another protege, Charles Banks, and pretty much every course they built had a number of these templates. Might have been 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. And Ashley and I went to the States in 2012, and that was kind of our first exposure to the templates. We don't have anything like it in Australia. And we loved this concept of the templates. When we started working on Lonsdale Links, and the land reminded us of Long Island, and we sort of started talking about the templates, that kind of a penny dropped. Pitched the idea to the club, and they were really interested.
It's always difficult to answer that question when someone says your favourite holes. There's certainly a couple that were quite dramatic changes on the property. The first in particular. The first used to be a couple of different holes that we sort of meshed together to form one hole. It became our sort of version of the Alps hole, and it come quite late through the design process. It was only really once we cleared the trees through there you could actually see the rise in the middle of the fairway. So the decision on the first is really straight off the bat. Do you actually try and hit a driver up the left-hand side, or a 3-wood up the left-hand side between the two groups of mooners? It does bring the waste into play on the right-hand side, but if you do manage to get over that ridge, it's all the way downhill, all the way to the green, and the ball will funnel all the way down to the edge of the putting surface. So it is drivable for some people, you know, from particularly on the forward sections of the tees, but even a longer player can drive the green. Otherwise, the decision is, do they lay back with an iron and then have a pitch to a green that's sort of quite small. It's got a really nice backdrop of Lake Victoria. It's a lineal green. It's got a false front on the front left-hand side of the green where you can. A lot of balls will sort of repel and sit down into that low section of the green. It is a decision straight off the bat. I can't think of too many courses. I mean, Victoria's one where you have a drivable par 4 actually as your first hole, but it is a drivable par 4 on your first hole, so it's a benefit to be to the range.
Four's on a really different bit of ground. Like, it's easy to get blown away by the sand dunes and the elevated ground, but I actually like 4 because you're down low and you're down at kind of at the same height as the salt marsh. Really strategic hole. You've got that pretty much a rectangular green hard up against Lake Victoria. It's drivable, so you can stand there, and if you want to hit a driver and try and drive the green, you can, but you take on a lot of risk. There's a big hazard to carry in front of the green. If you miss it right, you're in Lake Victoria. And then on the left, we just gave the golfer a lot of space, so it's a fairly wide fairway. You can play away from trouble, but if you play out to the left, your pitch into the green is kind of across the narrower section of the green, and you've got Lake Victoria immediately behind. So it's a pretty interesting kind of strategic hole and unique in terms of the environment that it sits in. 7, the short par 3, is a favourite. We were actually looking at some photos the other day of what that land looked like before. It was a slightly uphill, slightly inclined pitch to a part of the old paddocks of the farmland, and to look at it now and see what that hole's become, I think is pretty amazing.
16 is one that's always talked about a lot. Down the far end of the property, borders the property boundary on one side of the green. Basically, we're hard up against the green. It's sort of our version of the road hole, really. It's got one bunker on the hole, got a bit of a sandy waste off the tee shot on the left-hand side, but really only one bunker that comes into play, and that's green side. Green sort of wraps around in an L shape around this road hole bunker, and then the fence is really hard up against the left-hand side of the green. If the pin is left of that bunker, you really want to be down the left-hand side, because it makes the shot approaching that pin a lot easier, because you've actually got the fence on your left-hand side, whereas every bit you go to the right, you actually got the fence behind you, and there's that thought of actually, you know, you're going to run through the fence. One of the first comments I actually had from a member is they wanted to put some fencing at the bottom of, you know, like chicken wire at the bottom of the fencing, so that they could actually stop the ball from running out and running into the property boundary. I sort of replied with, you went bowling, would you have the bumpers up at bowling? And they sort of understood that. No, it's actually an element of the design. It was a frustration early for a lot of the members, but now they're used to it, and it's probably the favourite hole that a lot of people play. I mean, I know there's a few people that have had 2s on that hole. I just love playing it. It's short, it's another short par 4. It certainly creates a topic of conversation in the clubhouse afterwards.
You know, for us growing up on the Sandbelt and around Melbourne, those types of holes have become almost a signature of all of our design work, really. If you look at all the courses we've worked on, typically they feature a short par 4, maybe a couple of short par 4s and a short par 3. I think they're fun holes because they don't sort of prejudice against short hitters or someone who's just an average golfer. One good swing, you can fluke a birdie, and yet they're interesting enough for a good golfer. You can walk off with bogey or a double bogey with a poor swing, and that's just not possible on, you know, long par 4s are just, they're unapproachable for an average golfer. But short 3s and short 4s aren't, so that's why we like them. There are certainly challenges. It's a fairly small site, it's about 140 acres, and the shape of the property gets a little bit tricky in spots. Some of the vegetation is really significant, like we're able to remove quite a bit, the non-Indigenous vegetation, cypresses, pines, some of the degraded veg, but there's a lot of mooners, really significant mooners here, so you can't touch them. And some of the low ground, the sort of the next to the salt flats, you couldn't really change that ground too much either. So there were some challenges, and that led to, there's a couple of sequences in the routing where there were long walks. So like the walk between 2 and 3, 6 and 7, 16 and 17 were a bit longer than normal. That kind of led to an interesting design outcome where we find that as long as the walk's interesting and it's pretty, people don't mind taking that walk. So we, from 16 to 17, you sort of meander through these beautiful Moona forests and along this kind of unique path that's got shell grit pressed into the concrete, and there's these little kind of landscape, unique kind of sections of landscape that I think carry the fact that you do have a longer than normal walk. So I think we overcame some of those challenges really well.
What gives me the most satisfaction probably when I visit Lonsdale Links now is to see a thriving club. I mean, I can remember the day back in 2000. It was really struggling, the club, but you come here now, it's thriving. I mean, they're doing sort of 50,000 rounds a year. I mean, the golf course didn't rank inside the top 200 courses in Australia, and to see it ranked, top 20 in Australia now. And just to see the smile on a lot of members' faces. I mean, they'd been through some hard years, even those 20 years while we were getting the permit. I mean, the golf course was gradually sort of on the decline. So, and then they had to go through a few years of the development, but now they've got a brand new clubhouse, they're sitting in a great building, they've got a new maintenance facility, they've got, 8 or 9 members of the staff maintaining the golf course. They've got a great future fund set up. So to me, it's probably not so, whilst I'm really proud of the design work here, it's really, for me, it's to see the members and see how they're happy, and the people that took those really hard decisions back, sort of in those 2000s to make a change, to see where the club is now, it couldn't make me happier.